I never imagined the day I'd log into my own bank account and see zero. It felt like someone had pulled the rug out from under me, like the air had been sucked from my lungs. My name is Alic Rose, and until then, I thought I had something stable, something real to hold on to, the promise of a future paid for by my parents. But that promise, $800,000 in a college fund, vanished overnight. Growing up, I believed in plans, in structure. I was the kind of girl who made to-do lists even for summer break. My parents passed away when I was 13. It was sudden, a car crash. In the months before, they sat me down and told me they wanted to make sure I'd be okay, even if they weren't here. That's how the fund came to be. The account showed their faith in me, their final gift. I lived with my uncle after they died, my mother's brother. He said he'd take care of me, said it would be easier, not courtroom battles, no adoption papers, just family. I believed him. I trusted him. I kept my head down, studied hard, helped out around the house. When it came time to apply for universities, I chose the one I believed I deserved. The letters came back, acceptances, dreams within reach. Then came the day I opened the account to pay tuition. For the first time in years, I logged in. I expected 6 figures. I expected security. Instead, I saw $0. I froze. My hands hovered over the keyboard. The screen glared back, empty. My heart pounded so loud, I thought the walls might hear it. I tried refreshing. I tried another browser. I tried remembering old passwords. Nothing changed. I walked into my uncle's kitchen in the early morning, sunlight spilling through curtains, birds singing foolishly outside. My voice cracked when I asked, "Did you move the money?" He sipped coffee, eyes averted. "It's complicated," he said. Complicated. That was it. He told me the fund needed safeguarding from taxes, that some of it was used for family needs. He told me I wouldn't understand. And then he said something that punched me in the gut. "You don't need that kind of money for college." He looked down at his mug, visibly stiff. "You're being ungrateful." I felt cold all over. Those were my parents' savings, my future. How dare he judge what I needed? But I walked away. I left the kitchen before I could choke on words. I spent the next weeks digging, calling the bank, writing to the trust firm, demanding access. Each, "Sorry, we can't disclose that" response slammed like a door in my face. My throat grew raw from trying. Nights passed in restless half-sleep. I'd see the account screen in my dreams, black zeros mocking me. Then, one late night, I found an email tucked in an archived folder from when I was 14. It confirmed a huge withdrawal, signed by my uncle, electronically. The amount matched, almost perfectly. I cross-checked it with property sales I dug up, and then I saw it. A brand new home, bought full price, closed the same week. But the home wasn't in his name. It was in his son's, my cousin's. The house he bragged about, the theater room, the heated floors. I remembered him at last, summer's family BBQ. He'd joked about how the place was a steal. I laughed then. I laughed because I thought he was exaggerating. But he wasn't. My own dreams were sold behind my back. I realized I'd been living in a lie while they lived off what was mine. I collected documents, printed statements, bank logs, property records. One night, at dinner, I laid them on the table in front of my uncle, my cousin, and his wife. My throat was tight, my hands trembling with rage and shock. I said, "You stole my future." They stared. My uncle sneered, accused me of overreacting. They told me to leave. They said this was family business. They said I'd never understand. I left. I locked the door behind me, Tears stung my eyes. I walked into the night, pushing down the shame, the hurt, the betrayal. The lawyer's call came days later. What happened next threw everything into sharp relief. When I met with him, he flipped through my collection of evidence. He stared. He paused. He looked at me and said quietly, "This is not just unethical. It's possibly criminal." My heart lurched. The weight of it crushed me. For months, I'd been gaslit, told I was dramatic, told I was selfish. But now, someone was saying what I felt in my blood. I had been wronged. He dug deeper. My uncle hadn't just taken a lump sum. He'd slowly drained the account for years. For vacations, cars, upgrades in lifestyle. Tuition, not for me, but for his son. And somehow, I'd been turned into a convenient scapegoat. Signed documents claiming I gave vague verbal consent at age 17, without legal representation, without even knowing. I felt sick, violated, diminished. They didn't just steal money. They stole my identity, my hard work, my hope. They'd spent most of it. Little remained. And the house, it never even bore his name. Track record obscured, claims hidden in shell entities. There was nothing to repossess. I had been robbed by the family who promised to protect me. The kind of theft that can't be repaired by money alone. But I refused to let them win. I filed the lawsuit. Not because I believed I could reclaim every penny, but because I needed a voice. I needed someone to hold them accountable. When they turned against me, called me a troublemaker, I didn't flinch. In court, the ruling came in my favor. They ordered restitution. Not full, but enough for me to finish school. To rebuild. My uncle's name was tied forever to what he had done. The trust was revoked. The trust firm stripped. My victory wasn't perfect, but it validated the pain I carried. I walked out that courtroom broken, but also stronger, with fewer illusions. But I had my dignity back. The truth was out. This was not just my fight. It's a warning. There are so many Alic Roses whose stories are buried, whose futures are stolen by those they trust. This isn't just family betrayal. It's misuse of systems, of power, of what's supposed to protect. So I ask you, how many more stories like mine are hidden right now, silenced by shame or fear? If this moved you, don't let it end here. Share it. Speak up. Because the only thing worse than injustice is pretending it never happened. After the ruling, people expected me to feel relief, maybe even celebration, but I didn't. I felt hollow. The court had ruled in my favor. I was supposed to be proud, right? I was supposed to feel like I'd won. But how do you win a war you never wanted to fight in the first place? How do you celebrate knowing that your own family sat on the other side of that courtroom, staring at you like you were the enemy? The worst part wasn't losing the money. The worst part was realizing that none of them were ever going to say sorry. Not once. Even after the judge exposed everything, even after the numbers were laid out in black and white, they didn't apologize. They didn't look ashamed. If anything, they looked inconvenienced. My uncle didn't speak to me at all. My cousin wouldn't even make eye contact. His wife glared at me like I'd taken something from them. It made me sick. After that, I stopped hearing from the rest of the family too. One by one, they fell silent. No more invitations. No more texts. No more check-ins. The same people who told me to speak up if anything ever felt wrong suddenly wanted me to shut up and move on. I remember my aunt, my mom's sister, calling me selfish. She said, "This is just money. You destroyed a family over it." And I wanted to scream. I didn't destroy anything. I just refused to stay quiet while someone else destroyed me. But you know what hurt the most? It wasn't her words. It was knowing that if my parents were alive, none of this would have happened. They trusted the wrong people to protect me. They left me in the care of someone who saw me as a dollar sign. I know they thought they were doing the right thing, but they couldn't have imagined the betrayal I'd face. That pain doesn't go away. You carry it, like a scar beneath your skin, invisible, but always there. I tried to throw myself into school, to focus. I told myself I should be grateful, because now I had enough to continue. I got an apartment, I paid tuition. I bought the books I used to borrow or steal PDFs of. I made coffee in the morning and walked to class like I was normal. But nothing about me felt normal. Some nights, I'd stare at the ceiling for hours, thinking about all the versions of my life that could have been. The version where I went to my dream university, fully funded. The version where I didn't have to fight for every step. The version where my uncle really was the man he pretended to be. And then there were the flashbacks. Barbecues, family dinners, holidays. All the smiles, all the fake laughter. How many times had I hugged someone who knew what was happening behind my back? How many times had I said thank you to someone who was actively stealing from me? I started to question everything. Every memory felt tainted. Every I love you felt hollow. It was like my entire childhood had been rewritten in invisible ink, and now the truth was bleeding through. I stopped answering unknown numbers. I stopped scrolling through family photos. I even stopped calling the house I grew up in a home. Because it wasn't. Not anymore. Home is supposed to be safe. Home is supposed to be where love lives, not where your future gets sold. I guess the hardest part was how alone I felt. Even after winning, I felt like I had lost something bigger. And maybe that's what betrayal really is. It's not just the lie. It's the loneliness that follows, the silence, the space where trust used to live. One night, I got a message on social media. It was from a girl I barely remembered, someone I met once at a mutual cousin's wedding. She said she heard what happened, and then she wrote, "Something similar happened to me, but I was too scared to say anything. Watching you gave me courage." I sat there staring at the message for so long my screen went dim. I had been spiraling for weeks, thinking maybe I was the villain in my family story. But then this girl, a stranger really, told me something that changed everything. That my fight meant something. That speaking up wasn't just for me. And that made me wonder, how many others are out there? How many girls are sitting across dinner tables from thieves who smile at them? How many young people are told to be grateful while someone quietly steals what they were promised? This wasn't just about my story anymore. This was about every person who's been silenced with guilt. Every kid told, "Don't ruin the family." Every student who gave up on their dream school because someone else made decisions behind closed doors. That's why I'm telling this story. Not because it's easy, but because someone has to say it out loud. Family isn't supposed to mean secrecy. Love isn't supposed to feel like manipulation. And trust? It's not a gift you throw away just because you think no one will find out. I did find out. And I'm still here. Still healing. Still learning how to breathe without feeling the weight of their betrayal pressing on my chest. Still building a life. One they can't touch. You know, I used to think the worst part of the story was the theft. the loss of money. But now, I know the real loss was innocence. The moment I realized that sometimes, the monsters don't come in the dark. They sit at your dinner table. They call themselves family. But monsters can be defeated. And I did. After everything that happened, I thought I'd never be able to trust anyone again. Family, friends, even myself. It all felt shaky, like I was walking on glass. I didn't know how to let people in without fearing the next betrayal. Every time someone said, "I'm here for you," a small voice inside me whispered, "But what if you're not?" I moved out of my uncle's town and into a tiny apartment close to campus. It was nothing fancy, just 4 walls and a roof. But it was mine. I could lock the door and breathe. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of safety. That's when I realized how much I had lost. Not just money, but my sense of home. I missed my parents every day. Their absence was a wound that no court case could heal. But losing my family's support, their trust, it cut even deeper. I had to learn how to build my own family, made up of people who chose to stand by me, not take from me. School became my refuge. I threw myself into studying, late nights fueled by instant noodles and determination. I made a few close friends, people who didn't know my story, but who offered kindness without judgment. Slowly, I started to believe I could have a future beyond the theft and the lies. But even as I rebuilt my life, a part of me was still waiting. For what? I wasn't sure. Maybe a sign, maybe closure, maybe just the chance to say, "This is who I am, and I'm still standing." Then one day, out of the blue, I got a message from my cousin's wife, the same woman who had sneered at me during that dinner months ago. I almost deleted it without reading, but something made me pause. Her message said, "I'm sorry for everything. I didn't know the full truth. I want to talk." My heart raced. Could I trust her? After everything? I hesitated, then typed back, "Okay, I'm listening." That conversation was the hardest thing I've ever done. She broke down, admitting she felt trapped in a life built on lies. She confessed she hadn't known how deep the betrayal went, how much damage was done. It wasn't a total apology. There were still defenses, explanations, and blame. But it was a crack in the wall I thought would never break. It made me realize something crucial. Sometimes, the people who hurt you are also prisoners of their own choices. They might not be monsters, just deeply flawed humans. That didn't erase the pain, but it helped me forgive myself for holding on to anger so tightly. Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. It means freeing yourself. The fight to reclaim what was stolen became more than a legal battle. It became my story of survival, my story of finding strength when everything seemed lost. And I want you to know this. If you're watching and feeling broken, whether it's betrayal, injustice, or loss, you're not alone. You have the power to stand up, to demand the truth, and to rebuild. This story isn't just mine. It's for every person whose future was stolen, whose voice was silenced, who felt invisible in their own family. So I ask you, what will your story be? Will you let the past define you? Or will you write your own ending? Because the truth is, no matter what they took from me, no one can steal my will to fight, my will to hope, my will to live. And neither can you. After that conversation with my cousin's wife, something inside me shifted. I realized the silence around what happened wasn't just my burden. It was a secret that needed to be broken. If I stayed quiet, I was letting the shame and betrayal win, and I wasn't about to let that happen. So, I started writing. Not for court, not for anyone else, but for myself. I poured every raw, jagged emotion onto the page. Every fear, every heartbreak, every stolen moment. It was messy and painful, but it was mine. And for the first time, I felt a spark of power in owning my story. I shared parts of it online, on a blog, on social media. I expected judgment, maybe even backlash, but what I found was something else entirely. People reached out, strangers who had been through the same kind of family betrayal, young adults robbed of their futures by those they trusted most. They told me I wasn't alone, that my voice gave them hope, and that my story needed to be heard. That community became a lifeline, a reminder that even in the darkest stories, there's strength in connection. But opening up also brought new challenges. Some family members accused me of airing dirty laundry. Friends I thought I could trust distanced themselves, uncomfortable with the truth. The pressure to stay silent returned, heavier than ever. One day, I got a call from my uncle's lawyer, a warning wrapped in threats about defamation and legal action if I didn't take down my posts. Fear tried to creep in, but I pushed it back. I wasn't just fighting for me anymore. I was fighting for everyone who had been silenced. I hired my own lawyer. We made sure everything I shared was truthful and backed by evidence. And slowly, the story spread. Media outlets picked it up. People started talking. Not just about me, but about the system that lets family betrayals like this happen unchecked. The story sparked conversations in universities, legal circles, even government offices. But no matter how loud the noise got, I never forgot the person I was before all this. Before the theft, before the betrayal. I was still that girl who dreamed big, who wanted to go to college and make a difference. And slowly, I began to believe I could still do that. I still have scars. Some days the pain feels too much, but I'm learning to live with it, to turn it into fuel instead of a cage. This isn't just a story about stolen money or broken families. It's about reclaiming your life when everything seems lost. About finding your voice in the chaos. About standing tall when the world tells you to stay down. If you're listening and feeling trapped by your own story, I want you to know this. Your past doesn't define your future. You are stronger than the hurt. You deserve justice, healing, and peace. And sometimes, the hardest battles lead to the brightest victories. So, what will your next step be? Looking back now, I realize how much this journey has changed me, how much it's forced me to grow, to face uncomfortable truths, and to stand up in ways I never thought possible. What started as a betrayal, a nightmare that ripped apart my world, became a catalyst for something bigger. I'm still that same Alic Rose who dreamed of college, of a future filled with hope. But now, I'm also a woman who's learned that hope isn't just a feeling. It's a decision, a daily choice to fight back, to keep going, even when everything inside you says to give up. The truth about what happened to me, about the theft, the silence, the family's betrayal, could have broken me. And for a while, it almost did. But I refused to let it define me. Instead, I turned it into a story of survival and strength. Because stories like mine, they're not just about pain. They're about resilience, about the power of speaking out, about the courage to reclaim what's yours, even when it feels impossible. I've learned that healing isn't linear. Some days, the wounds feel fresh. Some days, the loneliness creeps back. But I've also discovered that I'm never truly alone. Not when I have the courage to reach out, and when others reach back. That's why I'm sharing this story with you, Not just to tell you what happened, but to remind you that no matter what you're facing, you can rise. You can fight. You can find your voice. Because the fight for justice, whether it's in families, communities, or the world, is a fight we all share. It's messy, it's painful, and it's deeply personal, but it's also necessary. So I leave you with this question. What part of your story are you ready to own? What truths are you willing to speak? And who will you stand up for, starting today? If my story has touched you, if it's made you think or feel, don't keep it inside. Share it. Talk about it. Reach out to someone who might need to hear it too. Because change starts with stories, real stories, raw emotions, and the bravery to say, "This happened to me, and I'm still here." Thank you for lies, listening. I hope my journey gives you the strength to start yours.